So this past weekend we did hang out and we went and saw a new release came out a couple weeks ago called Late Night with the Devil. This is a movie neither of us really knew much about. I had seen a little bit of teasers. I saw it was a Shudder movie. Shudder is a horror streaming platform that we both have been fans of for a long time.
Hmm.
And we did see another Shudder movie in theaters, Skinamarink. Didn't go well.
That's the thing about Shudder. It's very hit or miss. It's like, oh, indie horror, and you're like, oh yeah, and it's like, oh, indie horror. It's like, oh, yeah, it's very hit or miss. But even before that, I just want to say, before you get in the movie, the amount of trailers for horror movies in April that are coming out, and some looking very special and unique. Like one in particular is In a Violent Nature, where it looks like the entire POV is from the killer, which it like not his like literal like third person point of view.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this looks fucking awesome, and it's like I love that all this creative stuff is still coming out. It's like this feels like these movies that were supposed to be out in January, but they were like maybe they were pushed back because of the writer's strike, maybe
Maybe, yeah.
because January was kind of late for horror. I feel like maybe so maybe they're all coming out now. But we saw like six horror trailers in a row. So and also we went to Cinemark, and Cinemark is great. Sound booming.
Yeah, you recommended this theater to me, and it was my first time going there, and I was very impressed. Great sound. It's nice because it was an older theater. Like you can tell it's been there a long time, but they've done enough to keep it updated to where like the picture isn't shit, the audio isn't shit, the concessions aren't shit. Like it's all updated, but still has that vintage, older feel to it. Like when I was a kid. In the late 90s, early 2000s, going to the theater with my dad, it reminded me of that. So, yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I think like a crew of like 30 people, probably like in a work party, came in,
Yeah.
and we're like, oh, and they were just like talking like through most of the trailers. It's like, oh God. But yeah, like as soon as the movie sound started, I think in my head canon they were all talking that entire time. We just couldn't hear them
Oh, yeah,
because
yeah.
because the sound was so good. And they played like an ad for their version of IMAX, and the sound was great. I'm like, oh, now the sound's gonna be shit. But no, the sound was great from that like teaser for their IMAX throughout the entire thing. So go to Cinemark. Screw Regal. Screw those bastards.
I'm on team screw AMC for sure.
Screw them too. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so the movie itself, it's a horror movie that I guess you could classify as found footage horror, although it's the least found footage horror you'll ever see because it's supposed to be a late night show, so it's all either TV footage of the show or behind the scenes footage. It's not your typical found footage, running around dropping the camera. So you're not going to get motion sickness. It's barely a found footage, but I love found footage, both shitty ones and great ones. And what is the main actor's name in this? David.
David Schmallen. I'm not saying that right. I know we never say anyone's name right, but
Yeah.
but good old David D, who's been around for years, and I feel like just in recent, he's like really coming into his own. Like he started off, his first feature was The Dark Knight as one of those Joker's, minions or whatever. And I feel like he's always around, whether it's Polka Dot Man, whether it's that one guy from Prisoners, uh, whether it's Ti's buddy from Ant Man. He's always there. But I feel like hopefully with this one, this is the start of his like, okay, I can go. I can like give me like even bigger budget feature. I know I have a unique face, but I can do this. And I think this movie proved this guy can go. Like from playing off as like a likable TV host to the behind the scenes footage all in black and white, where it's like he's kind of a shitbag, and it's like oh shit, and then he flips it back on.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll start off spoiler free. We'll let you guys know before we jump into the spoilers. But overall, I definitely liked the movie. I was saying to my wife came and saw it with us too, and I was saying to her later on after we saw it, I'm like, it's funny. It used to be the case that I would see a movie like this and be like, oh, that was a solid horror movie, and like not think anything of it. But the movie landscape has been so dry since 2020 that this is one of the best movies I've seen, definitely this year, but like in a long time. And that's not to say it's an amazing, incredible 10 out of 10 film. It's not. It's
No,
just like a solid, new, unique horror movie. We just don't get that anymore, it seems. So I have to give it more praise than maybe it deserves, but I had a great time with it.
oh, I had a great time as well, and very unique and very for an hour and a half. It's slow, but in a good way. Like it draws you along. It takes its time. It builds a little world out on this set and all these little characters, and the story they're trying to portray. And it it respects you. I feel like it doesn't like need to be like oh look at this. It's like you're in this for the long haul, and it does a good job of slowly carrying you along, teaching you about what's happening on this show and this person and what he's done and what he's about to do.
Yeah, for sure. And just a very, very basic plot of what the movie is. He's the host of a late night show, and they're bringing on different guests on Halloween night. And he brings on a girl who's supposedly possessed, and he wants to talk to the devil, hence Late Night with the
Yeah.
Devil.
And he's number two. Like Johnny Carson is number one. This takes place in the 70s, like
Mm
76,
hmm.
77.
Mm hmm.
And so the whole gimmick is okay, you gotta, we gotta get number one.
Yeah, we got to save our show by beating Carson,
Yeah.
and the vintage style worked for me. We've talked before with holdovers and other movies how sometimes when a movie tries to really gimmick be vintage, it can be a little bit too much, but it worked for me here. My one big flaw with the movie is the opening. It opens with the news montage, and I get it because it's kind of like you have to know all this information for the movie to make sense. Okay, now the movie. Do I wish they could have got it in there another way? Yes, but I don't want a half hour put on the movie to put that in. So it's not the biggest thing in the world, but when it started, I was like, oh, uh-oh.
Yeah, that is tough. Yeah, and it kind of just lays out who this person is. Like I prefer uh one of my favorite examples of like what are we gonna watch is the Grave Encounters opening, where the one guy's being interviewed about like the footage of like, well, this is what happened and everything you're about to see is true and real. Where it's like that kind of behind the scenes footage. Like if this was like because they mentioned in this newsreel like, oh, everything you're about to see is from the show or behind the scenes footage. So like what we see is like the grainy camera of the like the TV cameras that they're using and also black and white uh, cameras for the behind the scenes stuff. But if we had someone from the crew or someone from like, that type of explanation instead of just like unseen news guy, it felt like it would have hit a lot harder.
Hmm.
Like that more creative, especially after we've already seen in a recent like Crimson Tide recently with the whole here's what's happening in the world, or
Yeah.
the worst example, the Jurassic World Dominion. You know,
Oh, God, yeah.
yeah, it's like without like an opening text crawl, there's ways to get your stuff out there. There's ways to get your exposition out there. It exists.
I mean, found footage, I think that's one of the strengths is a lot of found footage movies just start and you don't know what the hell is going on. And then it kind of gives you that information throughout. Although found footage movies are known to like not give you much information at all and then just end abruptly, which is what I thought was going to happen in this movie is that it would just end abruptly, and it didn't. I think we could probably jump into spoilers now, but I'll just say that
It kind of did a little bit.
yeah, we'll talk about it, but
Okay.
I'll just say I definitely recommend it if you want to catch a horror movie in theaters. If you're not into going to theaters right now, whatever the case is, I'm sure it'll be out to be available on Shudder pretty soon and to rent as well. So if you're into horror, I would recommend it for sure. But okay, we're going to jump into spoilers. What I meant was, I'm going to spoil it. At the ending, when the news footage cuts, or not the news footage, when the show footage cuts off and it goes, and it says, technical difficulties. I fully expected that to be the end of the movie, but it's not. We get a whole sequence after that with the 16 by 9 and, the main character having his whole dream sequence, whatever.
Oh, okay,
I didn't
yeah.
expect any of that. I expected it to just possessed girl kills everyone end.
Oh, you wanted to end there.
No, I didn't want it to.
Oh, okay.
That's just what I expected.
Okay, I
Because
got
that's
you.
like the found footage formula. Like,
Okay.
evil thing kills everyone, camera drops the end. So that didn't happen. So I was like, oh, we're getting a little bit extra here, a little bit more cinematic, beyond the found
Yeah,
footage
they
stuff.
changed like the aspect ratios. The cameras got
Hmm.
nicer, and I'm like, oh, this is crazy. This is nice. And yeah, and they held on so long, and they blew their load in the best way. I feel like with when the demon head splits open, and my favorite character gets killed in the best way with my favorite moment with the check, and this is a little detail like we discussed this movie when we were having dinner afterwards, like a little like, and that's fun. Like just uh, trying to figure out the whys and whens and like, oh, why did this happen? Why did they drop this? And try to remember like all those little lines of dialogue. And I'm just thinking of so many movies where you end where it ends, and then on YouTube you see like, oh, ending explained. It's like you didn't need that. You don't need an ending explained for Aquaman 2, you know what I mean, or whatever. It's like this is one of those ones where like I want to see an ending explained video because like they lay out so much stuff and then it ends, and you're like, oh wait, and you're just left asking so many questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I really enjoyed about it. It does give you some answers,
Mm-hmm.
but it does also kind of leave a little bit of it open. I really did love the skeptic character as well, as you were talking about, who basically comes on the late night show to try to prove everybody wrong. And he was great, had a lot of charisma. And I guess my what interests me the most about possession or exorcism type movies is always why is the power level of the demon so convenient to the plot of the movie? Like I feel like in every single exorcism and possession movie ever, the demon's just like not that powerful most of the movie, and then at the end just goes ape shit and can do whatever it wants. You know, it's like that's always interesting to me. Like, is the demon just doing that on purpose? Like,
Yeah, they kind of like show it. They kind of like explain it in this one, where like when the demon first takes possession, like it's almost confused. Like, where are we? What is this? Then I feel like once it's like fully acclimated, it's like, oh fuck this, we're gonna. But like, why didn't like the demon like go crazy earlier in the girl? Like, was like, I think her name was Jane. Was she really holding the demon back that much?
yeah, like what triggered it in this event, or was the demon purposefully waiting for this?
Yeah, it was the demon like, oh, I get to show, because the whole thing about like, oh, you never see proof of God or whatever. But the devil probably wants to show proof that it exists any chance it gets. That's what I would think. I'm guessing. Um, but practical effects, and like there's somewhere they don't look the best, but it makes sense because in one part, like the one dude's doing like the hypnotize thing, and like the whole worms and like the one giant worm and it comes out of the dude's head. It's clearly like a prosthetic head. It's like, oh, that's cheesy but fun, but it turns out it's part of the illusion. It's like, oh, made it work.
I'll take mediocre practical effects over bad CGI,
Yeah, true.
or in most cases, decent or good CGI even. Like I'll take a mediocre practical effect. I just appreciate the effort and I appreciate the art.
Mm-hmm.
I love that 100%. So I really appreciated all that in the movie, and there's a lot of it. There's definitely a lot of it. Even the stuff of when they start dying. I know there was some CGI definitely involved, but uh, even like moments like the woman's neck being cut by the necklace, like you could tell it was like real makeup, real fake blood as
Yeah.
oxymoron. But I appreciated all that stuff
Mm-hmm.
definitely.
Yeah. Uh, One thing I didn't even realize until just now, this is an isolation film. It
Yeah.
all takes place on this set or behind the set. Like besides like a few like they show like news footage or like archive footage, like when they go to the house with like the Abraxas dude.
Hmm.
I think the demon's name's Abraxas, but the people that worship Abraxas.
It's
Besides,
basically like a Freemasons Illuminati type meeting.
yeah, yeah, and besides that, it's all just on this set. And I have to say, in terms of like horror movies and children, like some children are either the greatest or they're terrible. There's no in between. And in this case, that little girl was great, like fantastic. I think one of the best horror, like the most cringe thing ever. You can watch The Exorcist Believer. You can watch. There's plenty of other examples, but like little kids trying to be creepy is just like, oh god. But this girl pulled it off so well because it was so subtle in the way she talked. It wasn't so, oh hello David Dashimonan.
Yeah.
It was just like it was like just like a little just a little nudge, like like the director was probably just be a little off, just a little off, not like it's just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
just a little off, and it worked so well in my opinion. Where I'm like, oh, this kid's good, this kid's good.
Yeah,
I don't know what you
definitely.
thought, but
Yeah, no, I think all of the actors were great, and it's great when you get a movie where you only know one of the actors, the main guy, and it's not
mhm.
like he's an A-lister or anything, and then everyone else I don't think I've ever seen in anything. I'm sure I could dig through their IMDb's and be like, "Oh, this person was in this,"
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
for the most part, they're all unknowns, and they're all so convincing. There wasn't one that stuck out. Even the guy in the beginning, Christo,
Christo,
he
yeah,
was really good too.
yeah, he was great. He looked familiar, and like there's a great little scene where like he's talking to the mom and the sister of the person that died, and then he starts like really freaking out, and it's like, oh, what's wrong? Is it a voice? And it's like, no, this is like he was about to say like this is real. Like I think he was about to say no, this is real because I think it's kind of revealed that he was like bullshitting before, and like before he's like, oh, I'm getting these voices, and then he goes into like he's actually hearing voices, and this that little change of like faking hearing voices and actually hearing voices, and about to reveal like, oh no, this is real, and then he stopped. It's like, oh, I probably shouldn't say that. It's
Yeah, yeah, and that's a nice little complex layered character for sure. So yeah, all around, I really like the movie. I mean, did you have anything else you want to say about it?
I can praise this movie all day, just in terms of the fact that a movie like this got a mainstream release.
Yeah, let's go Shudder, man. Getting these movies in theaters.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Shudder really took off with the Joe Bob show, like 2018. I think that was like their big push because Joe Bob was really big on Monster Vision back on TNT and back in the day. And I just feel like yeah, they've been a great platform to push out great content and also maybe not so good content, but it's there and getting a mainstream release. It's like I'm trying to think of the last time that's happened. Movie Pass with American Animals, maybe. And it's like
Yeah.
that's the main equivalent. Like seeing the Shudder logo, the bump 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 in theaters was nuts to me. Like this is fucking crazy. Like we're just seeing like a Shudder movie and like this in a big screen is like, and the fact that the theater experience was good. It's like movie theaters are coming back, but probably not. I mean, that was just
One off.
yeah.
We'll see.
It's similar to like sports betting or any betting where it's like you have a million bad experiences and you get that one good one. It's like I'm back, baby. I'm back. But the next movie's gonna be shit.
And I don't even know what the next movie I would even want to see in theaters is, honestly. I mean, Planet of the Apes probably. But beyond that,